Look at me. 35 years later, it still tears me up.
It seems that every time Deborah Tate comes close to getting over the pain of her sister Sharon's brutal murder, something happens to bring it all back.
I'd really like to know where you get the crazy idea that other people don't want to live.
This time it's the new TV movie, Helter Skelter, a harrowing account of two shocking mass murders, masterminded by cult leader Charles Manson. At the heart of the story is the brutal slaying of Sharon Tate, who was 8 months pregnant with the child of her husband, director Roman Polanski.
She was one of the last to go. She was pleading for her baby's life.
Sharon Tate lived and died here in the Hollywood Hills, and then suddenly nobody felt safe. Because if anybody led a charmed life, that somebody was Sharon Tate.
Excuse me, Mr. Drysdale.
She'd appeared in the TV show The Beverly Hillbillies, but her big break came in the movie Valley of the Dolls.
There was much more to Sharon than Hollywood saw. They only saw the physical beauty. She was extremely loving, nurturing. When she was a young woman, she would take me with her everywhere, include me in everything she did.
Sharon was murdered on the night of August 9th, 1969. Deborah had planned to visit Sharon that night, but her plans changed, and that may have saved her life.
I could have been killed.
Just like that, Sharon Tate was gone, and though a wild-eyed man named Manson would never again taste a moment of freedom, he did become what Deborah Tate feared he would become, a star behind bars.
People who commit heinous crimes are not icons. They are not superstars.
But movies such as Helter Skelter, as well as jailhouse interviews and parole board hearings, have kept Charles Manson in the headlines for more than 3 decades.
Yes, they should stay in prison for the rest of their lives.
This is Deborah Tate testifying at a Manson-related parole board hearing some years ago. She makes it her business to be there every time the man behind her sister's murder comes up for parole.
I just wanted to look in his eyes. Believe it or not, I don't think he's crazy as a loon. I think that most everything he does is extremely calculated.
And in the end, the enduring legacy of Charles Manson appears to be a trail of pain that never fades.
Oh my God, it's absolute devastation. Complete and total devastation. Sharon was my best friend.
No one has looked inside this trunk for nearly 40 years, until now.
I've never unwrapped this for anybody.
This California woman is showing us some priceless family heirlooms. They once belonged to her sister, one of Hollywood's biggest style icons, Sharon Tate. Sharon was the beautiful 60s actress who rose to fame in the classic Valley of the Dolls. But in 1969, Sharon and her unborn child were murdered. She was the most famous victim of the notorious Charles Manson family murders. Sharon's sister Deborah kept her sister's possessions all these years in this trunk.
It puts a big warm smile on my face. It's like having her next to me for a few moments.
But Deborah says these dresses are too beautiful to keep under wraps any longer. So for the first time, she's opening up Sharon Tate's trunk and showing only inside edition the wardrobe that made her sister a fashion icon.
How would you describe your sister's style?
Very eclectic, very free, spirited, and a combination between sexy and a childlike innocence.
With Sharon's sister's blessing, we went to Tripod Studios in Venice, California, and using a model, recreated a classic Sharon Tate photo session. It's the first time these clothes have been worn in 39 years. The makeup artist used old publicity photos of Sharon as a guide to recreate her distinctive look.
Sharon's whole look is about the smoky eye. It's all about the eyes, lots of eyelashes.
Deborah, who was only a teenager when Sharon was at the height of her fame, gave some last-minute suggestions.
What she would do is darken from the apex of the nose going up towards the brow with just a little bit of a shadow.
Then it was time for photographer Jeremy Corbell to stamp the photos. This look says swinging 60s. It's just like Sharon would pose in a mini dress and leather strings on her feet.
Am I doing this right?
You were doing pretty good.
Deborah says Sharon wore the strings to look like sandals so she could go barefoot into restaurants and stores in Beverly Hills. And you can imagine Sharon wearing this lavender blouse that doubled as a nightie. Or with boots, it could be a mini dress for a night on the town. And this is Sharon's mink coat, her name embroidered on the inside. But one dress was so special, Deborah wouldn't let another woman wear it.
Her wedding dress is also stored in here.
This is Sharon's wedding dress from her 1968 marriage to director Roman Polanski. He was in France at the time of the murders. The dress was made of off-white taffeta and has blue velvet bows on the sleeves. As the photo session progressed, Deborah Tate fought back tears. But despite her emotions, she was happy to show off Sharon's wardrobe that has been tucked away for decades, hoping it will help her sister's legacy carry on.
The horror began in June 1984. Los Angeles was under siege. Death waited in the dark at the hands of a man they called the Night Stalker. After a 14-month reign of terror, he was finally caught. It was only then that his true identity was discovered. His name, Richard Ramirez.
Richard Ramirez's whole trip was to hide in a tree or hide behind a fence and watch his victims at nighttime and wait into the wee hours of the night. And then, while they slept, creep in, like a coward, and kill them.
The Night Stalker killed at least 13 times, 13 people who were awakened in the night to face death. At least 15 others survived his brutal attacks.
I didn't particularly care for people.
In a rare interview, Ramirez refused to discuss his own crimes, but had this to say about serial killers.
A serial killer comes about by circumstances and a recipe: poverty, drugs, child abuse. These things, contribute to a person, to a person's frustration and anger, and at some point in life, he explodes.
Perhaps for Richard Ramirez, that anger and frustration turned to rage, which he in turn took out on his victims. His killings were so sadistic and brutal that even experienced detectives were shocked.
He took a woman in her 60s and stomped her to death with his foot, leaving an imprint of a shoe on the side of her face. From that to just executing somebody upon walking into a room after he entered a house. He strangled, he used a ligature, he used a tire iron on a young girl, beat her, left her for dead.
Would your anger subside if you had to wipe up your mother's blood? I couldn't finish it. I had to leave my brother to finish that chore.
Why on earth would you have hurt those people? Why did you kill those people?
No comments. No comments. I cannot answer that at this time.
What was Richard's motive?
To kill.
That's it?
To kill. It's as simple as that.
Richard Ramirez was raised in El Paso, Texas, the youngest of 5 children born to hardworking, strict parents. Eddie Milam was Richard's best friend back then and remembers when he began to change into a troublemaker.
I did start seeing something going wrong with Ricky Ramirez. I think what really messed him up was the acid. He would do a lot of acid. The stealing, I noticed the stealing and then started as a peeping Tom and things like that.
Ramirez's passion for burglary earned him the nicknames of Ricky the Thief and Fingers. But Eddie knew Ramirez had other serious problems when he was fired from a local hotel.
He said he was fired, he was dismissed due to the cause that he had tried to molest 2 little kids that were going up the elevator.
By 18, Ramirez was a high school dropout, drifting around California. He stayed in Skid Row hotels, never seemed to work, but always had the money to buy cocaine. Friends say the Richard Ramirez they knew didn't date and wasn't the type to commit such heinous crimes. But convicted murderer Martin Kipp, who befriended Ramirez in prison, says he heard another side of the Night Stalker.
Richard told me he needed to associate gruesome violence with sex in order to be completely satisfied. He also told me that he had to violently fantasize about his victims before he could go away sexually gratified.
They are desires, whereas if I didn't give in to them, I would be crushed by them. I believe in the evil in human nature. This is a wicked world, and in a wicked world, wicked people are born. I'm not going to blame society, my race, or people, or anything. It is up to the individual like myself to keep on knocking on whatever door they want to get into.
Because the victims and the methods of killing were so diverse, many experts felt there was no one Night Stalker. Detectives Carrillo and Salerno disagreed and finally broke the case by matching shoe prints. The subsequent trial turned into one of America's most notorious courtroom dramas, punctuated by continual outbursts from Ramirez. In that trial, Ramirez's fascination with Satanism emerged.
As far as Satan is concerned, I believe in a malevolent being. His description eludes me, but I have felt powers that are evil.
After an 8-month trial, Ramirez was convicted of all 13 murders and given multiple death sentences.
I don't care about myself, really. I don't care about what happens to me. I never did, really.
One of the worst places to be during the height of the rioting here in Los Angeles was inside a commercial building, any building, but particularly inside a liquor store. And that's exactly where we are, in a liquor store. And Charles Jones is in his liquor store, and that's where he says he will stay until the rioting is completely over.
Remember, we're not going to be here later, so make sure you got what you need.
Charles Jones opened his Compton area liquor store located deep inside the riot zone, knowing full well the danger. It was inescapable.
It's been a long day, and it could get longer.
Jones says his business was spared because he has respect and a good relationship with the very people in the area who were rioting.
I was happy to see my place standing.
But all around Jones's store, other businesses, large and small, weren't so lucky. We watched a stunned shop owner standing by helplessly, visibly shaken and unable to protect his clothing store.
What can we do?
Hey!
We thought being a black business we would survive it, but I'd say, what can we do?
I mean, how does it make you feel to be here seeing this happening?
Oh! Well, it makes you mad naturally because you work hard to build something up. And, your own people destroy it, so.
What do you think they're after? What is it that they're after?
At this point, I don't think anyone knows what they're after. I think that they're just caught up in the moment.
Well, I understand the frustration, I'm sure, like everybody else, but, this hurts. This really hurts.
They vandalized, they took everything. They really trashed the store. That was about 4 o'clock this morning. I came down. All the merchandise was taken. Bars were broken, windows were broken. So they took things out, everything out.
How do you feel about that?
Right now, I'm numb.
Put the fire out! Put the fire out! Put the fire out!
Business after business after business was helpless to stop the onslaught. If it wasn't looters, it was fire that shut them down. Fire after fire after fire kept breaking out all over the city, primarily in businesses, and businesses which probably will not be able to reestablish themselves once the riot is over.
This is an extended edition of the morning show and Front Page. We feel the community needs this.
A local radio station owned by Stevie Wonder fielded a full day of calls as people tried vainly to make sense of what was going on.
Come on, what are we doing to our community?
Outside, now brazen looters attacked commerce at will, bank teller machines included.
Excuse me, what are you taking out of that? What do you got? What are you taking? Is your store? Sir, just behind you, there are a dozen people looting a shop. What's going on?
No, those are all the owners over there. They're repairing all that stuff. Talking about back here? Yeah, they're all owners there.
They are owners.
Yeah, we're already over there.
But in a sea of chaos, smoke, and looting, Charles Jones's store is an island. Oh, there's tension and violence here, too. Outside, in fact, a man was shot to death in his car.
Was that related to the riot, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Because it was a Korean man driving down the street. And they shot him.
But inside, Charles and his son Michael try to do business, if not as usual, as close as they can get.
See, because you burn me down, I've got 6 other families that are dependent upon me, people that work for me. You burn down Harriet's beauty shop,
She's got some operators in there. They out of work, see. And the residual effect isn't going to be felt until it's payday.
We're standing in Midtown Los Angeles now, several miles from South Central LA, the core of this whole problem and where things started. And as you can see behind me, the building is engulfed in flames. There are no firefighters around anywhere. It's a situation that's on almost every block. The firefighters can't even begin to answer all the needs.
The fire department received more than 3,000 emergency calls by early this morning, but with hundreds of blazes, firefighters were a bit overwhelmed.
Number one, it's ridiculous what's going on. Number two, it's tough for us to do the job the way we're trained to do it because we're spread so thin.
Captain Kephart has been on the job since the riots began. He says there were very few victories as arsonists blackened the city.
Well, a lot of guys here are going to see more fires today and tonight than they've seen in 10 years. We've fought 4 fires already in 4.5, 5 hours. So it's crazy.
But that's not all that's crazy. Firefighters, usually seen as the Red Cross of Flames, have become the target of violence, even though they obviously had nothing to do with the Rodney King verdict. Still, they've been besieged by rocks and bottles and, in some cases, gunshots.
It's the first time in 14 and a half years that I've never felt like we've always been the good guys. People always want us. It's the first time in my career that I've ever felt like a lot of these people aren't happy to see us here, and that's unfortunate.
As many as 1,000 fires ravaged areas of Los Angeles, and dark plumes of smoke striped the sky a whiskey brown. Travelers flying into the city could see smoke as far as 70 miles away. Battalion Chief Duncan Baird shook his head in disbelief as he surveyed some of the damage. Targets included furniture stores and corner delis, markets and video shops. The fires quickly spread to homes.
I'm guessing there's probably 30 or 40 apartments in there, and those people are going to be out of a home, and it's really sad.
And as one of the structures collapsed, Baird seemed resigned to the partial futility of it all.
This building's probably going to burn to the ground. If and when it does, or we're able to put the fire out, then we'll just have to move on. We'll be reassigned to another fire somewhere else.
Many of those fighting the flames are longtime veterans of the department, men like Battalion Chief John Gamrett, who fought fires during the Watts riot in 1965.
Well, I was here during the original Watts riots, and it's much worse now. I think more structures are burned, it's more widespread, there's more looting, and there's more hostility.
And how is Gamrett dealing with the overwhelming situation?
Well, it's just part of the job. It's just something you have to do, and you try to isolate yourself. What's going on right now isn't right.
36 teams of firefighters from cities around California were en route to help the county's 1,700 firefighters. But that news didn't seem to bolster the exhausted troops.
It's a Holocaust. That's all you can say. Hopefully it won't last long.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder.
Across the nation and around the world, virtually everyone watched as Judgment Day came swiftly for O.J. Simpson.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is this your verdict? So say you one, so say you all.
Yeah. In New York, Nicole's former lover, Keith Zlomsewicz.
I can't believe it.
In Los Angeles, Ronald Goldman's close friends, Mike Davis and Jeff Keller.
Worst possible thing that could happen.
In San Francisco, O.J.'s brother, Truman Simpson.
Day of October 1995.
Thank you, Lord.
2:30. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is this your verdict?
We'll hear more from friends and family members only on Inside Edition in just a moment. But first, a look at the reaction outside the courtroom.
Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder.
After sitting through so many days of heart-wrenching testimony, Ronald Goldman's family was devastated that their last day in court ended like this.
Last June 13th, 94, was the worst nightmare of my life. This is the second. I will forever be proud of my son and my family. Thank you.
At a Simpson family press conference in the courtroom, O.J.'s son Jason read a statement from his father.
People will come to understand and believe that I would not, could not, and did not kill anyone.
I knew that my son was innocent, and I had the support of so many people all over the world.
For so many months you've been asking me, how do I feel? And I tell you, I just feel like standing on top of this table and dancing a jig, and I just want to thank you guys.
I believe that based upon having participated in the arguments, that this jury felt the prosecution hadn't proven this case. And when ultimately you talk to them, that's going to be where they came down.
I said from the beginning that race was not an issue in this case and should not be an issue. I still feel the same way.
Afterward, a somber prosecution had this reaction.
And then I'd like to thank the members of our team. You're wonderful. You're wonderful. You've given everything. You've given your all throughout all of it. We couldn't have done any of it without you. You've done a beautiful job. Please don't let this make you lose faith in our system. Please don't let this deter you from doing a job you're so well qualified to do.
I'm not bitter, and I'm not angry, but I'd also like to thank the lawyers on our prosecution team. I am honored to have
But whether you agree with the jury's decision or not, there is no doubt that this verdict will go down in history. And there is also no doubt that no one is more affected by the jury's decision than the family members and close friends of the defendant and the victims.
There's a special place in hell for people like Johnny Cochran and O.J. Simpson, and they'll be roommates there.
Nicole's former lover, Keith Zlomsowicz, remains absolutely certain that O.J. Simpson committed the double murders and blames the Dream Team for allowing a guilty man to walk free.
Justice didn't prevail. Scheming and lying prevailed. That's what prevailed. There's nothing remotely close to justice here. There's 2 dead people, and there's no one in jail for it. And the reason there's no one in jail for it is because he was just found not guilty. Not because that person's running around Los Angeles or anywhere else in the world and hasn't been identified. This was played out before the whole country and the whole world. And we all saw it, and we all saw the evidence, and we all know the truth. And the people that believe he's not guilty can try to mask that and hide that with excuses and reasons and things that don't make any sense. But deep down, everybody knows the truth. These people didn't just die. These people were murdered. And all those people on his side of the table, Johnny Cochran included, and every other defense lawyer over there, just shamed the legal profession by allowing a man to go free of murder.
What makes the verdict even more difficult for Zlomsowicz to take is that he had been convinced the jury would find O.J. guilty.
My heart is broken. She died in vain. She died for nothing. And he's going to be walking free on the streets of Los Angeles in less than an hour. It's not right. There's nothing right about that.
And if he could speak to Nicole now, this is what he would tell her.
I'm sorry. That's all I can say. I miss you. I think we did everything we could, and it wasn't enough. I don't think I'll ever be able to walk away from it. The situation's out of my hands. That gets to you inside, knowing there's nothing you can do.
I'm not going to look at the system anymore, objectively.
Mike Davis and Jeff Keller can't believe that the man they believe is responsible for their friend Ron Goldman's death will walk away a free man.
It's a crime. God will give him what's coming to him, though, because that's the deal. The guy upstairs knows what happened.
That's the deal, and that's the bottom line. Vindication will always come in the end. Whether it's served in the court or out of the court, justice will be served.
As Ron and Nicole's friends expressed their anger, O.J. Simpson's brother Truman was overcome with emotion after the decision.
And now we have time for ourselves. You know, he can go back to not talking to his kids on the phone and see his kids. That's the greatest joy of all. Right there.
But this trial was about more than just O.J. Simpson's guilt or innocence. It was about domestic violence, police integrity, the power of celebrity, and it was about racism. Word of the verdict quickly reached into the streets and neighborhoods of Los Angeles.
Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the...
Residents in South Central Los Angeles flocked to their neighborhood clinic and community center run by Dr. James Mays.
An innocent man walked because the people spoke, and we have to accept the word of the people.
It's a good feeling. I bleed in my heart he didn't do it.
I know he didn't commit the crime. I know it was somebody else probably had did it.
And as O.J. Simpson left jail and headed for home, a single vivid question remained for all the parties in the case. It was Jason Simpson who asked it for his father.
But when things have settled a bit, I will pursue, as my primary goal in life, the killer or killers who slaughtered Nicole and Mr. Goldman. They are out there somewhere. Whatever it takes to identify them and bring them in, I'll provide somehow.
The music world is numb today, stunned by the violent death of gangster rapper Notorious B.I.G. The tragedy happened here outside of the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles, where the rapper, also known as Biggie Smalls, was attending a Vibe magazine party for the Soul Train Awards. Now, shortly after midnight Saturday, Notorious B.I.G. left the party and got into his car when another car rolled by and shots rang out. At least 5 bullets ripped through the door, killing B.I.G., who was sitting in the passenger seat. Dozens of heavily armed cops arrived on the scene as word of the shooting spread. The bullet holes in Biggie's vehicle are mute testimony to the gang-style drive-by shooting that took the life of the Brooklyn-born rapper, whose real name is Christopher Wallace. Smalls was rushed in his bullet-riddled vehicle to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where he was pronounced dead on arrival. Dozens of fans, many overcome with grief, held a vigil at the hospital.
They've got a number of individuals that they're speaking to right now, and we're hopeful that we can resolve this matter relatively soon.
These are pictures of the 24-year-old Biggie at the Vibe party just hours before he was killed. Eerie images of a man who had no idea of the violent fate awaiting him. Biggie Smalls was larger than life. The robust rapper was 6'3", almost 300 pounds. He was loud and boastful, known for talking trash. His music was apparently a reflection of his real-life experiences. Biggie made no secret he once lived a life of crime, even selling crack on the tough streets of Brooklyn's Bedford-Stuyvesant section, where he grew up. His debut album, Ready to Die, was an immediate platinum hit, selling more than 1 million copies. The CD thrust Biggie into the stratosphere of rap music. Batari Kitwana is the editor of the hip-hop magazine The Source, where Biggie appears on the current cover.
Definitely, as an artist, he is at the height of the game in terms of his understanding of the art form, in terms of his popularity, not just in New York, but, nationally.
Biggie Smalls was also embroiled in a rivalry between East and West Coast rappers. His competition, Tupac Shakur, who once accused Biggie of involvement in a 1994 robbery in which Shakur was shot several times. Biggie denied those charges. More recently, the two men battled verbally over this woman, singer Faith Evans, estranged wife of Biggie Smalls and the mother of his child. Shakur claimed in his music to have had a steamy romance with Evans. She reportedly witnessed Biggie's murder Saturday night, almost a carbon copy of Tupac's death in September. Ironically, Biggie Smalls' upcoming album is titled Life After Death. A startling ad shows Smalls posing in a graveyard near a tombstone reflecting his likeness. So far, no arrests have been made in the killing of Notorious B.I.G., and the murder has shaken the rap world, which has once again lost a star to violence.